As Chief Content Creator at Amplify Me, you've written multiple newsletters and you also host a podcast called Market Makers. So I was wondering what your favorite thing about being a Chief Content Creator is and the influence and impact that you've had through your ventures.
Yeah. So I guess my career's changed in terms of what I wanted to do on the outset of finishing university to what I'm doing, what I did in my early career to what I do now. And so that will answer your question. So when I finished university, I wanted to work in creative advertising. I had no interest at all in working in finance. I fell into finance only purely because my brother who was working on a desk in a big US firm at the time, pivoted out of that, started up his own research firm essentially, went through a number of different analysts, and then eventually asked me shortly after I graduated whether I could help him out. And so that's how I got into finance. So never really set out to do it. I knew nothing about it. But out of a kind of loyalty to my brother, I was like, he's starting up his own business, so sure, I'll go and help him. Picked it up and pretty quickly. The role I did was very specific around news and real-time analysis, which felt very comfortable to me with my skill set. So I did that for 10 years. It was very full on, very markets focused. Clients were hedge funds, investment banks, stuff like that. So my job wasn't really creative at all for the first 10 years. Um, I kind of ended up becoming better at my job and more senior and so forth, kind of went on from there. It was only till really in the last several years of my career. So I pivoted firms and roles in 2015, that I got more of an opportunity to start stepping away from the market and diving into writing newsletters and trying to explain finance. I went from talking to hedge fund managers and people who work at banks, traders, to then talking to students.
Mhm.
So it was quite a big change. I've always very much enjoyed mentoring and working with young people. I think a lot from my early life of playing sport and you kind of coaching other people. Um, and so, yeah, I love the fact that now in my current role, I get to engineer a little bit because it's a smaller firm still about the projects I can work on and initiatives and strategy of the business. I very much sit on the community side. We're a technology company fundamentally, but what I do is try to bridge the knowledge gap between looking at something like the FT, which seems foreign to the large majority of people, even those who might even study economic theory, just what's happening in the world, and then trying to find creative and interesting ways to explain it that aren't like the FT that you can relate to, whether that's through copy, through visual, infographics, podcasts, things like that. So yeah, that's very much what I do today. And yeah, it scratches that itch that I originally had when I left uni, where I can be creative and really take joy in the fact of taking something that I feel has got quite a high artificial barrier to entry, i.e., high finance, and making it accessible for everyone, which is
Mhm.
ultimately the goal that I have.
It definitely has its own vocabulary, own dictionary, the whole finance world, and that's a huge barrier. And you've had such an extensive career in finance, bridging over 18 years. Um, I was wondering how that prior experience of working in equity, fixed income, how that background shaped your approach to financial education in Amplify Me.
Yeah, I think I think there's authenticity to what you do as to how people will receive and listen and read your work. So you kind of need the fundamentals to have to understand the market first. And I did that very intensely for the best part of a decade in my early career. So I feel like having exposure to all the different asset classes, different geographic regions. I even worked overnight in London covering Asian markets, working from
Wow.
9 in the evening till 6 in the morning every day.
Wow.
Um, all of that felt quite tricky at the time, quite challenging, but I look back in retrospect and think, yeah, it's because of all of those things that I was able to get exposure, to get opportunity, responsibility, and that then allowed me to acquire the knowledge to be able to have confidence to be creative. Because to be creative, creating things, it's a quite a noisy environment. We're all involved in Insta and TikTok, and there's creators everywhere, but they're kind of cycling the same thing. And so you've got to be confident in what your knowledge is and what your value you're offering, because you need to put it in your unique way and your unique style. And so, yeah, it's got to come from a place of knowledge in that respect, I would say.
That's really interesting. And you've also gone ahead and guest lectured at several universities, and the whole of Amplify Me has as well. And what is a misconception that you think students repeatedly have about careers in finance, and how do you address them with your background and your beliefs as well?
Hmm. Yeah, a couple different things. I would say there's a very narrow mindset, and I think a lot of that is led by peer group pressure, perhaps, which is you benchmark your success by other people and you go, what are they doing? Well, that must be what I should be doing, without taking the conscious decision to step back and evaluate, what do you like doing? What are your natural skills? What is your ambition? If you want to make a ton of money, sure, I got no problem with that. But what's underlying those motivations? And that will lead you down a more educated path that's probably going to be more suitable for you. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. I think people just naturally follow the peer group, the herd, then they actually apply, and God forbid they get successfully hired in an internship, because then they're an investment banker and they're like, oh my goodness, I hate it. And in my perspective, it's like, well, what a waste of time and effort and energy that you could have been doing for other things and your own well-being. And so, a lot of that is on the side of people like me to educate students and give them opportunities, but there's also on the student side to have confidence to think more broadly. I always explain finance is like a pyramid when it comes to available jobs. At the top of the pyramid is US investment banks, working as an investment banker at JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or someone like that. Now, that is a very tiny portion of available jobs that you're gunning for. And yes, they are highly sought after and would be great for your career and your future if you can obtain them. But if you think about the pyramid, the volume of jobs is everything else. If you're thinking about investment bank, even within that in itself, there's a treasury department, there's a marketing department, there's a HR hiring department, and within markets, there's a breakdown of at least 20 different roles within that, from research, economist, strategist, analyst. There's not just being a banker or being a trader as much as they are two options. Even within trading, I can think of 20 different role titles of specialisms you could do. One of which is basically you're a salesperson as a trader. So if you think about it, are you good at selling? Have you started your own business? Are you a hustler with some intellect? You could be great as a trader on a sales trading role. Flip side, are you a physics, engineering, mathematics student? You could also be good at trading in a quantitative trading way, or if you've got programming skills in an algorithmic trading way. So there's kind of subsections of each different thing that I think a lot of students just aren't aware of. And I think that can lead to a lot of wasted opportunity, because if you can get an internship, it definitely does help your career prospects for your second, third moves, graduation and beyond. So yeah, I'd say that's a
100%.
summary.
Yeah, it definitely stems from insecurity, and especially on LinkedIn when you see the posts of I'm happy to just accept my offer at, or
Hmm.
I'm happy to be part of the top 0.7%, that can really hit people hard, I guess. And I think another insecurity that people have, and I was wondering what your opinion is on this, is your school's prestige. So as we go into
Hmm.
internships, I think a lot of people might self-sabotage because they don't go to LSC or they don't go to UCL or Oxford or Cambridge. And I was wondering what your opinion is on that. And also, that's maybe why people could go to Amplify Me because they're like, oh, I need that one thing of experience, or I
Mm.
need that thing to showcase that I am really interested and really knowledgeable about this industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much a believer of, without it being cliche, I don't think anything is out of reach of anyone. It's a matter of how hard you're willing to work and how much effort you're willing to put in. Um, Certainly, my background, for example, I absolutely flunked my A levels because at the time, combination of I couldn't care less about education because I was training to be a professional athlete at the time, and I really didn't go to school a great deal. And then two, my mother passed away whilst I was doing those exams, and so the combination of that, I got two A levels, failed one, and got a C and a D. And I think back in retrospect, and I think it was different for me because I went to a very underperforming school. Um, I had a look. The average pass rate of obtaining a C at GCSE in the school in my town was 20%.
Oh.
Only 20% of students obtain a C. So I got straight B's and I was like the cleverest kid at school, sort of thing. And, then it puts it in perspective because then I talk to a lot nowadays to students who cry over getting a B and think, oh, my life is finished, it's crushed. And I'm like, wow, you know, it's just kind of what you make of it and understanding that I think a lot of young people I meet want that end game result. They want to work at the top tier firm in the top role with commanding the top salary sort of thing. And whilst that can be a good target, a good kind of stretch target that you hope for and work toward, the reality is for most people that, like for me, it could be a 10, 20-year journey to get to the point where you feel satisfied that's where you want to be. And so that, this is part of my education I have at the moment through that advent and evolution of 10 years of social media. It's changed a lot. The instant gratification that's required now to feel like you've hit your targets and your goals has changed quite a lot. So I think, you've got to have belief that, look, you're going to have to perhaps take a role you don't want to have, perhaps go to a geographic location you'd prefer not to be in. All these different sorts of things. Like I said, I worked overnight. Did I want to do that? Definitely not. Like, disaster for my relationship with my girlfriend. Um, so, there's that kind of thing about you have to adapt and learn and be resilient. I think being resilient is such an important thing that I've found that coming from a working class background is kind of inbuilt
Mhm.
because don't have a lot of opportunity, and so you make your own luck. I totally have learnt to sympathize with the people at the other end of the spectrum, though, where there's a fear of it's all to lose,
Mhm.
and what if I disappoint? I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder early in my career because I was like, you all had it so easy. They haven't got it that easy. It's a different challenge. It's a challenge of expectation. Um, and I think what everyone needs and what someone in my life background has given me is I've had the opportunities to fail and I've had the opportunities where I've given the room. There wasn't any other thing. It was like you try, you fail, you go on. I think for other people in a more structured environment, so the other side of the coin, you just need to put yourself in failure's way, be okay, accept that it's going to happen, learn from that, and then you start to get more confidence out of that, I
Yeah.
think, and then you can make better decisions and so on.